It is now recording. All right, year eights, this is exercise 1A. We're going to now just revise, just to start easy this week. We're going to do add and subtract positive numbers. The aim for this term is that you're going to venture into negative numbers, but we need to check if you can add and subtract positive numbers first, okay? So let's have a look at this one. So in your learning map, if you remember the first one, A1.1, was about adding using mental strategies, right? So let's have a look here. It says, example 1, how to estimate sum or difference of values or strategize mentally. Demonstrating here as an example. 263 minus 59. Now, obviously, if you were to do it through an algorithm, which is what you might have learned in primary school, this is what it will look like. You would write 2, 6, 3 in their place value columns. So you got your hundreds, tens, and units. And then you would write 59, and you do a minus. Okay, now some of us know how to do this and some of us don't. That's an algorithm. To do that mentally, sometimes people can do it and most people will find that harder to do. So what is a strategy that you can come up with right now without using this technique? What's another technique that you can do in your head right now that would help you solve this problem? Hands up. Ashwin.
Maybe just get the nearest number that is like for example 260 minus 50, and then you get that number, then you add the rest of the numbers.
And then get the rest of the numbers. So you got 3 and you got the 9.
Yep.
You add them.
Yeah. So you got 260 minus 50, so you put 210, and then 3 plus 9 is 12, so then 210 plus 12 equals 210. I'm still calculating.
That's okay. That's okay. So this is good. So what was his technique here? For those who weren't sure what he was doing, instead of working with 263, it's too hard. In our brains, we don't really do well. We do well with tens, groups of 5s and groups of 10s. So what he's done is he's changed the 263. Why don't I call it 260 instead? There is a bit of a mistake along this way here because that's a subtraction sign, but the techniques is really interesting. So I'll show you what he's really doing. I'll break it all apart. Don't write this down yet. What he's doing is, instead of writing 263, why don't we write it as 260 plus 3? Because that is 260. Minus, now instead of writing 59, what is he also writing now? He's writing 50 plus 9. Now this is the small mistake that he's made, and it's a very common one when you get to year 8 algebra. You see, he said 260 minus 50, which was correct, but the mistake here is he then went plus 3 plus 9. It's actually not plus 3 plus 9, because remember, this 59 is being subtracted, right? So actually, there should be a bracket here. When you split it up, this is why BODMAS matters, where the order matters. The 59 was made up of 50 plus 9 first. So you can't just subtract the 50 and then add on a 9. It should have been minus a 50 minus a 9. So if he's done it this way, if he did 260 minus 50, he can then add on a 3 minus 9, and that will be the correct answer. But this is still, and that's still a better technique than doing this in your head. There is a bit of a same strategy, but a better way to get the answer quicker. Has anyone got a better one? Okay, how would you round it? Good. Yeah. That's very good. Okay, so for those, that's probably the strategy I would have used as well. Remember, there's no correct answer here, just which ways you would prefer for yourself, right? So here, what did Ava say? Ava was saying 263 minus 59. Now, if you split both of them, that's a lot of mental representation to do in one's head, right? So instead, what she said, well, instead of 59, why don't I round it up to 60? Well, I know I don't have 60. So what she really did was that 59, even though you're writing 60, how do you make 60 a 59? What do you have to do? Minus 1. Very good. You need that minus 1. So what she's doing here is she's doing 263 minus the 60 minus the 1. Okay, now this is where it's interesting because you're minusing the 60. 263 minus 60 is easy. What's 263 minus 60? 203. So this gives you 203. But remember, because you added on that extra 1, you have to now subtract that 1. True? Oh, sorry. You added the extra 1. So now you have to subtract the 1. So subtracting the 1 gives you now 202. Okay, and that's a mental strategy. Yep.
The answer is 204.
That one would be added.
Sorry, I forgot what I just said here. Right here, there's a minus with a 60, and I forgot that you're doing a minus of a -1. So the opposite of minus of a -1 is actually a +1 there. So because you added that extra 1, you have to keep in mind that's 60 plus 1. So 263 minus 60, which is 203. And then you got to remember to plus the 1. Now, there's a lot of different strategies here that you could utilize, but the idea is rounding it to a nearest 10 or nearest 5 will make it easier for you. Yeah.
You could move the +3 behind the +9. So like flip it, and then the opposite of +3 is -3. So then it'd be 260 minus 50.
All right, going back here. So you're saying 260 minus 50, yeah?
Yeah, and then you can move the +3 behind the 9. And then since you flipped it, you have to switch to +3. So it's not -3. So 9 minus 3 is 6. So then 210 minus 6.
Beautiful. I'm going to show algebraically what this looks like. What was it, Will?
Yeah.
Will, this is what Will's actually doing. Now, I know for this very first step, there seems to be a lot of techniques, and that's why I'm saying no one's wrong here. But I want it to be clear with the mathematics why it works. 263, what Will was saying was, again, the brackets matter here. He's saying, why don't we just call that 260 plus 3, which is good. That's okay. Minus, now this is where you got to be careful. He's still splitting it up with 50, just like Ashwin did before. But I'm putting the brackets in to make sure that you realize it's not just minusing the 50, it's also minusing the 9 as well. So what he's doing here is he's saying, all right, I'll still do 260 minus the 50. That works. There's nothing wrong with that. 260 minus 50 is 210. But notice, what do we still have left over? We still have a +3. This is not a +9. Remember, that's a -9. That's a -9 there. Okay, and I know it seems a bit more counterintuitive for you here. Because the +3 -9, and a lot of you haven't learned negative numbers yet, this actually is -6. Having $3, and if you owe $9, so -9, you have an overall of -$6 left that you owe. So that's why 210 minus 6 works. Now, this is the actual logic to it, but Will did it intuitively, which is fantastic. So that's why I'm saying, first question, everyone should be able to tick off. Everyone has their own strategies. It could be long, it could be short, doesn't matter. It's just whether you can get it right. Okay, and you can still do this one in your head too. That's okay. I just want to know what strategy you're using. So when you're doing those questions, can you please write down an explanation? What are you doing to get there? So I just showed you 3 different versions there. You choose which one you like. Okay, so this one's a bit messy in terms of notes. Let's go to the next one. Estimate the answer. So notice the difference between the question. They said numbers mentally, solving it mentally, versus estimate. What's the difference between estimate and then solving mentally?
Estimate is like close to, well, mentally is like the answer.
Correct. When you do a question, if it asks mentally, you have to get the actual answer. Estimate, you don't. You can estimate it, so you can be slightly off. So we would estimate this. Instead of doing 79 plus 32, what's an easier number than 79? Let's go with Elliot. What's an easier number than 79? What would you round it to?
80.
Yeah, 80 is easier. 80 plus, let's go with Bo. Instead of 32, what's an easier number?
30.
Yeah. So 30 plus 80 is a much easier number to estimate. What's 80 plus 30 roughly equal to? You're new to me, Wilbur. 80 plus 30. Beautiful. So we say it's roughly estimated at around 110. Okay, so that's the difference between the two questions when you're doing them. If they say mentally, there's a strategy, you got to explain the strategy. When it says estimate, it's much easier. You can round the numbers. So 32 can become 30 and 79 can become 80. So try to round it to the nearest 10. You can do it to the nearest 5 if that works for you better, but I think rounded to the nearest 10 is easier. Okay? All right. Let's have a look. Question 3 now. So this exercise, you'll just be working with, can you add and subtract numbers using the algorithm that you've learnt in primary school? How this works is you literally add all of the column units, add all the tens together, and then you add all the hundreds together. So let's do a bit of maths here. Starting with the units column, this is the units column. We're going to add all the units together. 8 plus 5 is equal to what? Yes, Will? 13. But in terms of units,
3.
that's very good. So this is your units. That's why we write the 3. And the reason why we carry the 1 is because, yeah, it's 110. Yeah, because remember 13 can be split up into 10 plus 3. So that's why we've got 1 tens and then 3 units. That's the reason why we write 3 units and then there's an extra 110, because that's what the 110s is. Yeah? Now, if you've got that extra 110, let's add all the tens column now. What's 1 plus 1 plus 9 equal to, let's go with Kyle? 11. Very good. And again, that's not just 11, it's 11 tens. What's 11 tens really equal to? 110. So that's why when you write 110, notice that's why we put 11. We put the 1 here and then we carry the extra 1. That's the reason why we carry the 1, is because that extra 1 was actually the hundreds column. That's why we move it over there. So 11 tens is equivalent to 110 units. That's why. Okay, so I'm going to write there 11 tens equals 110 units. That's why we write the 1 in the tens column and we write the extra 1 in the hundreds column. Okay, so it wasn't magic. It was just logic. Last one, we've got the hundreds column. We've got 1 plus the 5 plus the 3. And what is that, Leon?
1 plus 5 plus 3.
Yep.
You have it right there, bro.
What?
That one.
Oh, that one. I thought it was that one. Yeah, that's 9.
9, very good. So 6 plus 3 is 9. And you can see here, 913. So this is the algorithm that you would go through for addition. You'll do the same for the next one. The next one is 141 plus 96. Okay. Actually, oh, where's my minus? Did I never give you a minus one? Can you change that one? Can you do subtraction instead? That was meant to be a minus. Just cross that off and write a subtraction. If you did addition, well done. But we're going to do subtraction. Sorry? Yeah, you write another one. You write it again. That's okay. Because it says here sum and difference. For those who don't know, what's sum again? Addition. So if you didn't know, let's copy that down, write it in. Sum is plus. What's difference? Minus. So if you didn't know, write it down. It's minus. Difference is minus. So here, we're finding the difference of 141 and 96. Now, same idea. Subtraction for some students, this is trickier. Because if you haven't followed the algorithm before, and now I'm teaching you the reasoning to it, we can only subtract large numbers, take away small numbers. Okay? But if we look at the first column here, in the units column, 1 take away 6. 1 smaller than 6. We can't take away 1, take away 6 in positive number region. So what do we do? What do we do? Very good. And the logic to this again, why does this work? Because this 41, this 41, remember, how do you write 41? 41 is the same thing as writing 40 plus an extra 1. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, you know what? Why don't I write it as 30 plus 10 plus 1? See, 30 plus 10 is 40. And then 40 plus 1 is still 41. But when you do this, that extra 10 can now be converted into units. So that one extra 1 tens becomes the 10 units. That's why it feels like you put a 1 over here and you cross the 3. All you're really saying is extra 10 units, 10 plus the 1 gives you 11. That's how you get that 11. So that's why you're really doing, you're carrying the 1 over. You got an extra 10 units with a 1. So 10 plus 1 is 11. 11 take away 6. 11 take away 6. Now 11's bigger than 6. What's 11 take away 6? Can I please have, let's go with Haoshuan. 11 take away 6. What is that equal to? 5, that's correct. So 11 take away 6 is 5. And we run into the same problems again. 3 take away 9, 3 is too small. So what do you do? Take the 1 because it's in the hundreds column, and the same theory. You then change it to take an extra 10 or 100 off. And so if you take this one off, that becomes 0. Carry the 1. This is now 13. Very good. This becomes the 13. Take away 9 is possible. 13 take away 9. 4. So the answer is 45. Now for those who got confused again, why that works, right here. See that 1 before, that was 100? That's 100 units. When you cross it off, what you're really doing is you're carrying over an extra 10. Okay, you're taking that extra 100 units. So when you carry it over, that extra 1, that's another 100 units that you're moving over here. So that actually ends up being 130 units take away the 90. That's what you're actually doing. Because you're moving the 100th column, you're moving the 10s, it becomes an extra 100. That's why. So here, if you move the hundreds over, you add an extra 100. If you move this one over, you add an extra 10. That's what you're actually doing. That's why it's possible to do 130, take away this 9. It's not 9, it's 90. That's what that represents. The 9 in the 10s column represents 90. That's why we say 130, take away 90. Okay, now if that explanation was confusing, don't worry. You just got to learn the algorithm. So you can always borrow the other column. Okay, so borrow from the other column. And that's how we do this technique. Now, I'll be spending time in this session to walk around to make sure you learn these 2 algorithms. Okay? All right, last one. Last one for today. This is now problem solving. So remember how I said in your learning map? Your learning map? When you do your questions, if you do just the fluency section, which is usually question 2 to 5, you'll sit about somewhere here. So between the pink and the orange. Okay, there's a fluency skill. So it'll just be the ones that you just did just now. What you just did just now. But when you're doing these types of questions, problem solving, that's usually about question 6, 7, 8, maybe even 9. Those are the questions that are now problem solving. You got to think through it, right? So it's not just an algorithm that you memorize. Now you have to think through it. That then brings you up into around the yellow section. So that's why, depending on how many questions you choose, that's where you tick, because you'll find those skills in those relative columns. Okay, so if you want to get into the good section, then you've got to do more problem solving questions. If you want to get into the green section, you've got to do more reasoning and extension.
Do we fill this in today?
Sorry?
Later.
You're going to do exercise 1A today.
Oh no, do we fill this in today?
Whenever. This is your choice. You're going to stick it in your book. All right, team, let's solve this problem here. So we've got 230 something plus something 94 equals 600 and something. Let's work it out. What's a technique that you can logically see already? In the first column, there has to only be one number that can fit in this one. What number is that, Kyle? Shh, shh, shh. Very good. If you've got 4 there, you're adding on. Now, no matter which number you think of, if I did 1 plus 4, it gives me a 5. Doesn't end up with a 1. If I do 6, 7, 8, 9, none of it has a 1. Even 10 doesn't have a 1. The only one that has a 1 in the units column is 11. So that means this 4, what number will add to 4 to give you 11? That number has to be 7. So the logic is this has to be 7. That's problem solving. Yeah, so 7 plus 4 gives you 11, but you got to carry the 1. Let's work it out. 1 plus 3, 4. 4 plus 9, 13. So this is a 3 here. Carry the 1. Now 1 plus 2 gives me 3, but the answer has to be 6. So something plus 3 has to equal to 6, and the answer is 3. So filling in the spots, you should have 7, 3, and 3. Can you see the logic on how we're solving the problem? This is different to fluency. So when you're doing your exercises, you choose the questions that you're up to. You don't have to do the problem, so you progress at your own pace. Okay, so fluency is the first thing. Add, subtract, the algorithm you have to know how to do. Mental strategies, come up with your own. Estimate, learn how to estimate. That's your fluency, right? The next section, you can only do this if you're good at your algorithm. Okay, so don't attempt these if your algorithm's not good yet. So these are problem solving, and that's where your learning map, you can start ticking off and find out where your strengths are. How's that feel? Very good. I know it was a bit of a long session, especially the first bit. Later on, it will get a bit faster. Okay? All right, team. It is currently 11:12. You get a bit of break. Let's just stand up. Let's just loosen up a bit. Just pause.